Hey everyone, this is Sachin, the future law student. I am here with new videos. This is my first part of an eight series, in which I'm going to be making 8 different videos on criminal law. We're going to talk about things like the definition of criminal law, where did criminal law come from, where can you find criminal law, and how it is used in research. What is the main purpose of criminal law, how we punish in this video, and the reason for punishment. We are also going to talk about the nuts and bolts around different crimes, the different punishments as we move towards, as we move on into the videos. The particular video, though, is just an introduction to criminal law. So let's get started. So first of all, what is a crime? So in order for me to actually describe this to you, I would like to go all the way back to the colonist era, where they came over from England. Yes, we are going to go that far back. We're going that far back because in one of the sources of criminal law is in a future slide, is known as the common law. The common law system was brought over from England by the colonists. It is how things were done. Crimes were those things that people in society didn't want their people to do. They find it disruptive, they did find it morally wrong, and they definitely did find it dangerous. So when we're coming back to talk about the common law and how things were done back in the day and how important these things were to people. For example, people did not have a lot of money, maybe they didn't have a lot of property, but a lot of them had livestock. So one of those things I would like to talk about is if I was a colonist and if I had a goat, that's very important to me because it could provide me with a lot of potential meat or milk or even cheese for that matter. I'd be very unhappy if my neighbor came along and killed my goat. Yes, I would be absolutely outraged. I would imagine other people in my village would be very outraged too to see that my neighbor killed my goat, because they would be very afraid that my neighbor would kill other goats as well. I would guess that this is one of those things that causes everyone in the village to say that, hey, there should be a law against this and how crimes got started, okay? That's why we are talking about it, and even though that it was my goat that was killed because of this outrage, there would be a person in the village who would be elected to represent the village. And in modern day times, this is called a prosecutor. And they represent the local, state, or even a federal government. And they would prosecute my neighbor, not on behalf of me, the goat owner, but on behalf of the entire village. That's the difference between the criminal law and civil law. One of the main differences, one of the main differences, but we are going to focus on is the aspect where the government base the authority. There have been an elected person, a prosecutor, who represents society as a whole. Okay? So just remember, criminal law is something that everyone is obsessed about. No one wants it to happen, and the prosecution represents the people, not a particular individual. In the case of Heim versus DPP 1974 2 all ER 41, a British woman at night time, while the family was sleeping, decides to take a half a gallon of fuel and pouring it onto the family's home. Heim, who is the defendant, starts a fire without the family knowing. After the fact, she ends up killing two girls from the family, and the mother and the son escaped. Under the Criminal Law Act 1990, New South Wales, anyone who commits a serious crime is sentenced to a big punishment, and was going to talk about that later in my video. Anyways, this happened in the UK, and during the trial, the prosecution found that the defendant was found guilty under the first-degree murder, but she said it said that it was only her intention to scare the victim, due, um, the victim, due to the killing of two innocent girls and attempted murder of the mom and the son. She was found guilty on two acts of murder and sentenced to imprisonment. Okay, some historical notes. And I talked about this idea that everyone in the village says that there should be a law against the neighbor who just went over and killed a goat just in cold blood. Well, it's characterized by a Latin term called maxim that is called the presumptual of legality. I am not going to pronounce the Latin term. It translates to penalty without the law. So, in other words, my neighbor went over to a brand new village and killed my goat. Currently, there is no law against killing goats in our village, but there was an outcry. My neighbor, unfortunately for me and unfortunately for the village, cannot be prosecuted. After he killed my goat because there was no law against it, he did not know that he had to curtail his behavior. He had to stop himself from killing my goat. There is no law in the books which says that it's illegal to kill goats. There is no law against it. It was if he was able to do that, but everyone was upset about it and had an outcry, and in response to that, we can assume that the village heads got together and wrote a law. Thou shalt not kill any goats, okay? Without the owner's consent, because maybe you bring it to your neighbor and, hey, I do not really want to kill the goat for the meat. We are friends now. I had him for many years, a number of years, but we are hungry. Can you kill him for me? 'Cause I don't want to do it. That will be basically consent. So I'm assuming that this law is that you are killing someone else's goat without their consent and need to establish some sort of punishment for this. If you do violate this law, then you will go to jail for it for a year, and you will have to pay a fine of 5 goats to your neighbor, whoever goat that you killed. Okay, so that would be so that the whole idea of the principle of legality. In that, he said, hey, is there no law. There's actually no law in the books. It's not a crime, all right? Next, the government had power to do this. They had power to get together and write these laws. This is one of their inheritance and authorities, so they can influence your behavior through establishing criminal laws, and do this through the civil laws system. Always remember, when they were writing the criminal law, they had to be balanced with your rights and established under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Bill of Rights. You can write a criminal law that infringes along freedom of religion or freedom of speech. Make sense? Alright? So, just make sure that sometime you hear people say that, oh, that law is unconstitutional. So, the reason why it will be non-constitutional is perhaps they crafted the law. That somehow conflicts with one of your civil liberty. So where we find criminal law? So if you're going to do your research, that you are going to find it in the common law. And we talked about the common law, that it was developed in England and brought about in the United States by the English colonists. But the main thing is that you need to know about the common law, that is the overriding principle. I do now know the pronunciation. That one is called stare decisis. It is the doctor and the judicial decision that stands in precedence for case arising in the future. So now, my neighbor killed my goat. Unfortunately, there was no law against it. It is when he killed my goat, so there was nothing that I can do about it. The village heads got together and wrote the law. He then went to someone else's goat and killed the goat. We all know that he's a goat killer. He went ahead and killed this person's other goat. So, when he killed that other goat, the village owners, they had a prosecutor. Their prosecutor came, and on behalf of the entire village, the neighbor was prosecuted. He spent a year in prison, and he had to pay 5 goats to the person's goat that he slaughtered. Okay, and basically it worked. Our first judicial decision on the books. Now Mary, she killed a goat after the law was brought up. Mary, however, said that I killed this goat in self-defense. And they were like, what do you mean? She came in and she had bite marks all over her arm, and she had poof marks all over her forehead. Quite a scene. She claimed that in self-defense, well, the village owners looked at it, and while she was being prosecuted, the judge and jury, they looked at it and they said, wow, it might be self-defense, but the law clearly states that if you kill a goat, you're going to go to jail. Um, a goat, and therefore she went to jail. She went to jail, but she appealed it to a higher authorities. So when she appealed, she went to the appellate court and looked at it. They looked at it, and we looked at the legislate intent on the law. When we don't think that the village owner, that they wrote the law. The legislator, we don't think that they meant to prevent people from killing goats in self-defense. So it seems like it was her or goat in this situation. What choice did she have? We are going to carry out the the little bit of exception to the rule. So they did, in the judicial decision, they carried out that exception of self-defense. So they decided that Mary, in fact, killed the goat, but justifiably reason of doing so. So the idea or starting our decisis says that the court decisions what is called precedents. Precedent is basically precedent is of the same higher court which a judge must follow. We're deciding a subsequent crime case. So Mary, she and her case carved out the exception for self-defense. So now, when Sarah kills a goat, and she's so in self-defense, she can use Mary's case and say that Honor Village versus Mary, she was allowed to protect herself because she was basically attacked by the goat, and the judge looked at it and sentenced Jews precedents. I have to follow that, and I have free and I do find that you did kill the goat, and in self-defense, and therefore you can go to jail and go free. That is the idea. That's our common law system. Those are cases that is called case law, and they are based on judicial decisions, but they arise by the particular in incidents, things that actually happening, and those judges have to interpret the law, and they look at a variety of basically factors. So there is very simplistic very they're very simplistic about it, but that this basis of it. Where else do we find criminal law? So that you know that the principle of the law, the legality that you are supposed to, when you are not supposed to do, the Constitution says out some things, and so does state's constitution. Things like treason. You want to not do that because you can be accountable for those. You can be accountable for those actions. Yeah, basically. So, what are the purposes? I have talked about the village, about goat killers running ramping in the village. We we want to protect society, but they are not going to be tiny things. Sometimes they are, but for the most part, they are larger crimes. These are things that are considered to be mostly wrong or extremely dangerous. It is serious behavior, and how we prevented this behavior from happening. Punishment. The goal of punishment are basically on the last slide here, and these goals in which to punish, we want to prevent people from doing this in their behavior unless there is some kind of punishment. How else are we going to do this and deter their behavior? That is why the first two are deterrents. The term specific deterrent refers to the neighbor that the goat killer. My neighbor likes to murder goats. Specific deterrence would be aimed at my neighbor, teaching him never to do this. So he went to jail for a year and he had to pay 5 goats. Hopefully, my neighbor learning his lesson after paying 5 goats, and he doesn't go around killing more goats. Now, when we punish my neighbor, we have to is what is called general deterrence. That the rest of the village go, wow, didn't see what happened to this guy. He killed a goat. We went to jail. He went to jail for it for a year, and he had to pay 5 goats. Neither do I want to do the same thing. And this is general deterrence. That's why that you see if you see someone else getting punished and it worked out, you also sometime which is can be a severe punishment if nobody is punished for the crime. You will go, wow, that's a reality, that's really severe punishment for a particular crime. Nobody should have that. Let's say that you know this guy and find the goat, and he got away with the crime, which in this case, blah blah blah. He had to pay 5 goats and went to jail. After 5 years, he hasn't learned his lesson. He killed 3 other goats. After this point, he had incapacitation himself. we have to put him in jail for a much longer term. Incapacitation is when you are removing the individual from society for what is constitutional to be inappropriate. Among time, the death penalty is the ultimate incapacitation for those states that have the death penalty. If you think that the crime committed was 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 egregious enough, they deserve to die and permanently incapacitated them, permanently remove them from the society. That is why if we put this guy in jail for 10 years after he killed those goats, he is going to get out the cause of cause he was 20, because he was 20 years old. He was 20 when he committed his crime. So he actually still going to get out and going to be he's going to get rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is something that can happen while this guy is incapacitated. While he is incapacitated or on probation, or maybe he's in jail or home confinement. But maybe we need help. We need to help him out. We need to help him out so that this guy stops killing goats, because it's not severe enough that he requires the death penalty, but he's still a menace so maybe we should give him a high school education, and maybe should give him a degree, some kind of technical job or skill, or maybe we can help him so we can give him counseling. We can we can we can't So these are very important programs. Rehabilitation is a very important program from a criminal justice standpoint. Those who point is the whole point is to protect society, and you are putting people back out there, and they're just going to do it again. So you really need to look at rehabilitation as an option.